Over these past 5 days, a discussion has reemerged as to what we might do not only to deter mass shootings in the future, but to reduce the epidemic of gun violence that plagues this country every single day.
The president yesterday looking for solutions to gun violence in the wake of the Newtown shooting. Is there an epidemic of gun violence in this country? And is it getting worse? Some important questions for us today. According to the Associated Press, criminologists who have studied mass shootings believe there is no real pattern or increase in recent years. Again, according to the mass shootings. One criminologist, Grant Dewey, tells the Associated Press his research shows mass shootings rose in this country between the 1960s and 1990s, but have dropped in the recent decade. FBI data on deadly shootings in general seems to follow a very similar pattern. Now, that said, although mass shootings may actually be less frequent, and again, there's a lot of numbers out there, one of the facts that's also out there is that they're more deadly. Half of the deadliest mass shootings in this country have taken place over the last 5 years. Rebecca Coffey is author of Murder's Most Foul and the School Shooters in Our Midst and has done extensive research on this, Rebecca. And it's important that, this is such an emotional story, Newtown, that we wanted to take a brief moment to talk about some of the facts when it comes to school shootings so then we could prepare to make whatever decisions we need to make ahead. What are some facts that you've come across that seem consistent in the school shootings that you've looked at?
Well, it seems sometimes that this is a new phenomenon, that it struck in the late 80s and went through the 90s. But in fact, the first school murder was in 1927. It was a school board member who detonated the local elementary school in Bath Township, Maine, killing 37 students, children, elementary school children, and 7 adults. So that makes it the single most deadly school massacre ever in America, far more than Virginia Tech.
Still, no matter how we look at the frequencies, whenever there's a school shooting, it rocks us at the core. And so now we're at this question about what should we do, and that's a big question for us today. But when you think about your research, what rises to the surface is some other patterns that you might see in school shootings?
Yes. The FBI spent a long time trying to compile a school shooter profile. And what they came up with was a description of the typical young male.
The typical young male.
It was useless. So the Secret Service in 2002 did a study and realized that 81% of the perpetrators of massacre at school had told someone beforehand what they were about to do.
So they had telegraphed it. It wasn't something done in top secret.
Right. Typically, these are not impulsive actions. They're very well planned. Columbine, for example, was planned for over a year. Virginia Tech was planned for long enough for Sung Hee Jo to prepare a manifesto, to prepare videotapes to send to NBC. That's the pattern, is that they're well planned, and during the planning phase, the perpetrator is so filled with emotion that he tells somebody. Sometimes he tells many people, and that gives us the information we need and the time we need to stop them.
If it's out there so obviously, why couldn't they be stopped?
Why couldn't they be stopped? Partly, I think there's a code among children to not turn each other in. When I say children, right? Nobody wants to be a tattletale. But also, I think that things like zero tolerance policies in schools get in the way, because let's say we're on the playground and you say, "I'm so mad I could kill somebody." I know you're kidding, but what if you're not? And I tell the school counselor, you're going to be expelled whether or not you were kidding.
And so that actually works against school safety.
Us, yes.
We don't know in this case about what, if anything, this killer told anyone.
We don't.
But
know.
Based on, again, your research quickly here, what's the suggestion you come up with as something that should be done almost immediately?
I've looked very closely into what the FBI is saying, and what the FBI is saying makes very good sense, which is we need to train teachers, school counselors, and community mental health providers and law enforcement how to identify the threats that kids make and how to separate the wheat from the chaff. So they're not chasing every silly threat, but they know they get committees together of counselors, law enforcement, teachers, so that you know each kid from several angles and you know what to do with that kid. So
We'll see if that comes up in the president's task force that he's putting together for the new year. Rebecca, nice to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time. We'll be right back.